Pretty exciting here. SilverName versus Zhym as we get into this one. But the SilverName, the mage banned. So it's just gone. It's not going to be played in this series. The respect, and frankly, it's like, what do you even make of this? Is mage some kind of counter? Is Zhym, it's not a counter, but do you think Zhym has correctly identified that mage is the biggest problem out of, Galakrond Warlock, this Druid deck, and the Demon Hunter?
It's a great question. I'm just looking up now Spellmage matchups against the decks that he has. He does have that OTK Demon Hunter, which I think is the big reason a lot of people do like the Spellmage, because you kind of have that perma-freeze effect if you get, just one deep freeze down. But I think we established before that he's not running deep freeze in his deck, right?
He is not, no.
So you can kind of throw a lot of percentage points off that matchup if deep freeze is not available, I would imagine. Otherwise, it doesn't seem to have like insane matchups against the rest of the stuff that he's going to be bringing. So yeah, I'm not really sure about it.
Yeah, we checked the amazing Reno matchups versus some archetypes though, because I think that's when we can talk.
Fair enough.
Yeah, maybe people just don't want to play against it. You know what I mean? It's like, I ain't playing against Spellmage today. I'm not feeling it. But there's Zhym's lineup, the Token Druid and the Galakrond Warlock and No Hands Warrior. And honestly, although we talk about some of the more crazy archetypes that are knocking around, such as No Hands Warrior, but Galakrond Warlock, the epitome of consistency right now, I think, in terms of just the overall strongest deck in the game to just consistently do well. It never really whiffs, does it?
It doesn't, no. And just so now that we're seeing Zhym's lineup, like for example, comparing his matchups to Spellmage, which was his ban here, just looking at high rank data off HS Replay, Galakrond Warlock is 50-50, Spell Druid is 50-50. Obviously the OTK Demon Hunter is the one we're talking about, but I don't, you make up a number for how much percentage you want to cut off for that deep freeze not being there. But it starts off at a 64% matchup for the Spellmage at Legend. So it does seem like there's one deck that becomes very vulnerable by leaving up Spellmage, maybe, but the rest of his lineup seems just fine against it. So it is a very interesting looking ban.
Yeah, and just to note as well, his Spellmage, SilverName Spellmage, runs a very interesting secret package to me. He runs 2 Flame Wards and 2 Ice Barriers. So, hyper defensive, hyper anti-aggro minion based. Yes?
I've figured it out.
Oh, okay. So raised his finger to me that I can't see, so I had to stop. That's the rules.
So I mentioned it yesterday, but on day 1 when Zhym was playing, that Huntrace was the only player he hadn't banned Druid against in this entire tournament. So against Huntrace, he banned Priest. Every other game he's played, he's banned Druid. Maybe Zhym just thinks SilverName's Druid list is too trash to ban, and therefore he had to ban something else.
That's reasonable.
That's about the only theory I can come up with right now.
Or he bans Druid unless his opponent's bringing a weird deck and bans that. If he banned Priest and now he's banning Mage, he's like, I don't want to play against those.
Sure.
No problem at all. But yeah, just to finish...
I mean, honestly, this could be a good point. Maybe he just doesn't want to play matchups he doesn't understand.
I don't understand Spellmage matchups, so it makes sense to me. But the secret package, just to finish my point quickly, is very, very much anti-aggro, but it doesn't create any aggressive points. I mentioned Netherwing Portal yesterday, and I'll mention it again today. I think it's actually a really good secret and can, kind of just throw out a big minion for your opponent to try and deal with sometimes. And I feel like without it, it definitely makes SilverName's play on his Spellmage more sit back and try and remove stuff, as opposed to, get that Learn Draconic into minions, which normally comes down around the same time, especially with the Netherwing Portal, to try and push some damage along with that Apex's Blast as well.
Sorry, I just, out of the corner of my eye, TJ posted a picture of how he sat to cast. It's really funny. But yeah, I think this is going to be a great match either way, because I would have liked to see a little bit more of the Spellmage. As much as those of you who follow me on Twitter have seen me going in on Mage recently, just the fact that it's a slightly different deck that we're not seeing too much. I think for these first couple of weeks, it's important that we see as much of those as possible, just to keep the experience fresh for everyone involved for as long as possible. So I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of it, but still, even without that deck being played, there's still plenty of talking points in this series.
Yeah, and honestly, though, with some of the nerfs that are knocking around in the next week or so, none of them are aimed at Spellmage, right? So maybe SilverName's like, well, it worked for me last week. again, and we see it in LHS, although I'm not sure what deck you'd want to snipe with. My Spell Mage will definitely beat this one. Anyway, we'll have to wait. That's for next week. But for now, we are going into game number 1 in the second semi-final between SilverName and Zhym. Zhym on the bottom on the Galakrond Warlock, and SilverName on top with this Druid deck. And honestly, just going off the points I mentioned earlier, the Galakrond Warlock, I've been just jamming it a bit more this morning, and it is so good. Like, you almost never just don't have a decent turn. It's crazy. It's just... it does the same thing every single game, Sol, and that is what you want to do in a card game.
Yeah, it's an incredibly good deck. I think, once I got a few games under my belt and sort of started to realize how... I don't want to say the deck is straightforward, it's absolutely not. It's a complicated deck with a simple goal, and it's sort of a soundbite you would have heard me say like 10 times over the last 2 days, which is just invoke your Galakrond, play your Alexstrasza, kill your opponent. Achieving that is very complicated, but if you keep your mind focused on that strategy in most matchups, you're going to do very, very well with this deck, because it does that one thing incredibly effectively.
And I think that's the learning point I think a lot of players will get to. I feel like that's stage 2 Galakrond Warlock, because I feel like stage 1 for players, maybe as they pick it up, they'll see it as just an anti-aggro heal deck. Like, oh, there's tons of removal and there's tons of heal. Sweet, and it runs Zephyrus and Alexstrasza. Great. But then, as you said, stage 2, I feel, is definitely the whole, well, you basically stall, and then set up to just completely overpower your opponent in a couple of turns.
Exactly. They go hand in hand, right? Because you don't have to worry about doing anything until you Alexstrasza your opponent, you can build all of the rest of your deck around surviving and beating aggro and doing everything that you need to do to get to that point.
One interaction here, though, is a little bit different. Is SilverName does technically run more waves of minions and some slightly higher health ones than normal, with the 2 Anubis defenders as well as the double Force of Nature. So Zhym, I think, more than normal against Druid, will maybe have to just really consider how and when he uses removal, and maybe be just a tad bit greedier with it.
Gonna have a dialect conversation, Raven.
Oh?
So, the word tad started out in the north and then made its way down south, and it's now something that you hear a lot down here as well. But in the north, you say tad bit, which is redundant, because both of those words mean the same thing. What are you doing?
It's a smaller tad.
Okay. Okay, sure. Sure, fine. I'll accept that answer.
There you go. Next conversation, please.
Yes.
Let's move on to a new topic. But yeah, I don't know is my honest answer. It's just the way we speak.
Yeah.
But here, SilverName, in a weird spot, because he's frozen, he doesn't really have a good way to deal with this 4-3, which is very weird the way it's worked out. But he's going to Crystal Power and go with the bees, and this leaves him with some tokens on board. And not that bees was the first thing in my mind when I was just talking about the way Zhym has to play, but these bees can do something. They're a target potentially for Soul of the Forest. They get buffed like any other minion in the game. So Zhym does have to just consider, how much damage can I take? How much damage is he likely to have to, add from hand? What removal do I have in my hand now? What do I think I'm going to draw soon? Can I take a hit this turn? And he has to ask himself that probably nearly every turn this game.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was talking to Casey the other night about, was it Frozen Shadow Weaver? How he was surprised that how that card was just kind of good. Like, it wasn't even necessarily like a tech card. It was just reasonable in a lot of matchups. And I think we've seen from, like, Bad Luck Albatross, for example, that, like, 3-mana 4/3 is just an acceptable shape these days, particularly in this metagame, where everything is, like, hyper-tuned around Demon Hunter to either be a 2/2 or deal with a 2/2 and similar-sized minions, right? So just having a 3-mana 4/3 kind of over-contests a lot of things and is out of range of a lot of people's base removal. So I think, like, that card is perhaps one to keep an eye on in the coming weeks, whether we might be seeing a little bit more Frozen Shadow Weaver coming into play.
Yeah, I as soon as I saw it, I was surprised there wasn't, I'm talking pre-release here, I'm surprised there wasn't tons of hype about it, because to me, it's not, if it was a weapon removal card, right? It's like, well, if you're against a class with no weapons, it's just a 3-mana 4/3. But there's almost always something to freeze, and if you freeze anything, it's normally a positive, right? You've done something to your opponent, as well as, quite rightly you said, it's a reasonable shape for the mana cost. So yeah, I feel like it always gets something achieved. Sometimes that's insane, freezing a combo demon on its face, for example. And sometimes it's freezing a druid's face just so it's a little bit more awkward to hero power. And that's still good enough.
SilverName, unperturbed though. I think he's still in a relatively comfortable position in this matchup from where he stands. He's just missing a couple of power cards here to really pop off, but it is one of the benefits that his build has, where he can just continue to poke and annoy at the Warlock by just making kind of medium-sized boards over and over again, seeing if they want to deal with it. The problem that he runs into is that Galakron Warlock is so good and so versatile that against those medium-sized boards, Zhym can choose to just do what he's doing and just make his own medium-sized board and not worry about it. So I think that dance between making one player have to remove and have to react, I think SilverName does have to start to put some amount of pressure on sooner rather than later.
I prefer the terms regular size board and baby size board.
Baby board and regular size board? Yeah, okay.
But again, this is what I said, like these Force of Natures don't exist in many Druid decks right now.
Nope.
So SilverName still has Glowflies. He still has, you know, the Gift of Wilds and the Forest Aids later on, and he has the Anubis Defenders, which, as I mentioned, mess with cards like Dark Skies and don't get cleaned up by, you know, Nether Breath because of that 5 health. It's actually just pretty awkward for the Warlock to actually deal with, when a lot of the time, as is the case now, Zhym needs to go, okay, technically I could die next turn. How do I clear? And if I clear, how much do I clear? Can I get away with killing 2 to 3 tokens and pass? Or do I need to Dark Skies? And if you need to Dark Skies now, as I just mentioned, there are still Glowflies, there are still Forest Aid, but that's -1 Dark Skies gone.
Looks like Zhym's going to start with cycling his coil here, and then looks like Netherwing is the most efficient clear for the rest of it if he wants to go down that line. Ooh, Shield of Galakron is pretty exciting though. I could see him diverting now just to getting back onto the Invoke plan and just kill one more 2/2 with the minions he has.
Okay.
You alright?
Yeah, I think... No, I agree. I think my brain just went a different way. I thought the Netherwing now, because it gives him time to do it, and he's at a health total where he can take it. And the Shield of Galakron also, although obviously, yes, you want to invoke and get that Galakron ready, but it's also a kind of snap board for a quick plague, if you need to. But sure. I think there's very little between them. You know, I'm not like, oh, you shouldn't have Shield of Galakron. It was just I leant towards Netherwing and you leant towards Galakron, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of flip most of what you said on its head, right?
Exactly.
Which is not like a me right, you wrong situation. Exactly. It's just like, well, any board that he would need to like snap a Plague of Flames against, well, he still has the Netherwing this way, so he can just Netherwing against it anyway, you know?
Yeah.
What to do?
And most importantly, he does have that Alexstrasza, which means the Netherwing is active, and Alexstrasza especially it's a pretty tough card to get off in this matchup. So it's going to be there charging up the Netherwing for probably most of the game.
Right. Is he going to intend to Ironbark this turn? I imagine he is. Protect something from Crazed Netherwing. His whole board, it just explodes if he leaves it as is. Yeah, it's got to come down.
And I like splitting it as well.
Yeah, for sure. Makes sense.
There is Netherwing into Nether Breath, though, as well, you know, if he really wants to go for it. But also now with this extra Galakron invoke from the Devoted Maniac, it means it's getting close to actually just a Plague going on here.
Yeah, he can go Nether Breath, Plague of Flames here to get the clear. Yep, looks good.
And this is why the deck is so good. Like, why is it allowed to clear these boards over and over again, you know? And it's not even an effort. Zhym's not even had a lucky draw, has he? These are just the Warlock cards. This is what you get every game. It's crazy.
So now Zhym has invoked very quickly here. Okay, that potentially does change things. I was about to say Zhym has invoked very quickly here, but it actually doesn't matter that much because he likely doesn't have time to play Galakron until he can, for example, Dark Skies in the same turn. Like Dark Skies coin
Galakron.
I
think he can.
But having just drawn the Plague of Flames, he has ultimate security blanket if he needs it, right? Like, if he just whiffs on terrible demons, he can just blow up both boards with this Galakron this turn. So I think that draw is actually a nice blanket that's allowing him to do this! Priestess of Fury!
Okay, that's pretty good. And I was going to mention, just as a side note as well, that another option he has is coin Hero Power Sack Pack. You know, just to get like an extra 5 health to make him even safer if he felt a little bit worried about SilverName, you know, trying to pop off and trying to just kill him this turn if he didn't get a taunt. He can do this, and this was always available to him. And honestly, going like 30 plus health is actually quite hard for Druid to do.
Yep.
Oh, look at that as well. Cleaned off at least one of those. Not bad at all.
That was a fairly nutty Galakron. Priestess of Fury, Giga High Roll, 5/6, very strong. 2/1, okay, garbage. Scrap Imp, when Scrap Imp is supplementary to an otherwise good Galakron, I would say it's a pretty good outcome.
Yeah, and already more Scrap Imps than we saw the whole of last series.
Yes, very good.
And one of those series actually runs a Scrap Imp.
Yes. Zhym needs to educate his fellow Frenchmen on how to roll Scrap Imps, apparently.
Yeah. And even the portal Overlord,
Overfiend, I believe.
Overfiend, oh, yes. Close. Is just a great shape, isn't it? You know, plenty of health, decent amount of attack, can multi-trade if needed, or just kill SilverName. So I think that Galakron was definitely on the pretty high positive end of it, as far as I'm concerned.
Agreed.
And suddenly, Alex Straza looks like it could be pretty threatening going forward.
No Gift of the Wild coming down here.
And no Ironbark as well, because SilverName used them a little bit. Oh, used one a little bit earlier?
Yep.
Is it just Dead Soul? Or is he going to
There is 30... Ooh! Ooh!
Is he dead in a different way now?
No, I don't think so.
16 with the Netherwing. He's got 10, 11, 12, 13. If he Alex Strazas and just puts him to 2. That sounds good to me with the Netherwing.
Wait, how much mana do you have this turn? Did you say you wanted to Alex him and then Netherwing, or did I miss it?
No, like a setup for the Netherwing if he wanted to go that way. Put him to 2, and then he basically has to overflow, or he's dead to just a Netherwing no matter what.
Well,
he wouldn't be, sorry, because he'd have played Alex Straza. Apologies.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Take it back.
Yep.
But most importantly there, the more realistic outcome was, well, SilverName's in a rough spot. I'm going to clear his board so he continues to be in a rough spot. Exactly,
yeah.
And I like it.
I think the correct thought process that turn was cursory check for lethal, don't find it, okay, cool, I'll blow up his board. Like, that's about as far as that had to go.
Spectacular.
Oh!
Ouch. Even SilverName was smiling there. He's like, well, that happened. And I believe that's just game? Because if he oh no, he can remove the 5/3, right, with Bug Blast.
He can kill the 5/3 with the Bug
Bog Beam. I really want it to be called
Please immediately stop saying Bog Blast. I can't handle it.
It's not even intentional. I'm not even like trying to be funny. It's just genuinely what I want mentally the card to be called. So that did access a good chunk of removal there actually for SilverName. So he's feeling a lot safer than he did about 3 minutes ago.
Yep.
Also 10 out of 10 for SilverName here. Just as a side note, he can really put up a green screen compared to a lot of the players, can't he?
That is looking pretty solid, actually.
You know what I mean? Like, here's props just right now. It's one of the best green screens I've seen in a long time.
So how do we feel about a 10-10 this turn?
Pretty good. Yeah, and to deal 3, why not?
Otherwise, you're developing a 6/5 and a 4/6, but you don't really want to develop Moarg, right? Because, although, does SilverName have any targeted removal left that you can get punished for playing your 4/6 Moarg Artificer? I'm not sure he does.
I'm looking at the list. I think we've seen everything. I'm fairly certain, actually, because we've seen 2 Bog Beams and the Crystal Powers.
Play Wrath.
Yeah,
he doesn't play Wrath, right?
And he doesn't play Moonfires even. I know it would only do 2, but 2's twice as much as 1.
Yeah, this makes sense. I think Zhym might have just gone through a very similar thought process that we did. This also develops 10 power, but it develops it, spread out in a series of threats, and you maintain your Alexstrasza for emergencies if need be. Seems good to me.
Yep, Overflow kind of out of the game right now for SilverName, since it will pretty much kill him. But just doing what he can. Oh, he does have one Ironbark. Sorry, I thought he used them both. So what could he draw now to just end this? Has he used both Nether Breaths? I don't think so, right?
He has used one.
Yeah, so he could use one Nether Breath to get him through the taunt and push everything else.
SilverName is currently just dead on board.
Oh, sorry, yeah, he is, isn't he?
Yeah.
Even through the taunt. Yeah, apologies. For some reason, I thought he was like 2 off or something.
Just like 3-3, 1-1-1-1, or go into the 3-5, and then
it's
everything
18,
else goes
right?
face. And he's dead, yeah.
So he can't even... The Innovate Hero power doesn't actually save him, does it?
So, unless you're going to come up with a master plan that I don't see, I think you're out of time, friend.
Yep, very limited options, and Zhym locking it in straight away. He knows what's up.
Yeah. And like I said, if you're a Galakron Warlock player, you have to Alexstrasza your opponent before you kill them. It's just the law.
It's the rules.
Yep.
Yeah, that is going to be the game. 1 going to Zhym. SilverName just couldn't quite get off that. Even though he did provide just a couple of extra waves, I don't think at any point there was that one, oh, how do I clear this? And if you remember from a few days back now, Sottle, my main question when I was playing this Druid list, well, not SilverName's exactly, but, the Druid archetype, I was like, how are people beating Warlock without double Soul of the Forest? Because I just didn't see how it was possible, because we saw one looked pretty good, but he was dead, so it didn't matter. If there was one any earlier, I'm not saying SilverName would have won, but it wouldn't have been as easy to clear from Zhym, right? So then questions can be asked. But it's why I feel there's enough room in the deck for a second Soul, mainly just because of Warlock being an absolute, a menace on ladder, at least at the moment.
Were you going to swear then, Raven? You're a very greedy boy with your Soul of the Forest. But yeah, I do want to say that was a pretty smooth curve for Zhym. And also very interesting, because I want to come back to the point. Zhym has banned Druid in every single series against players not called Hunter Ace so far this tournament, of which he's played 9 or so of them before this. All of them not against Hunter Ace, he's banned Druid. SilverName, he's also chosen not to. So I don't know whether there is something about the Spell Mage list that Zhym's fearing that I don't necessarily see, or whether it's just a lack of respect for the way that SilverName in particular built that Druid deck. But either way, he left Druid up, and he was rewarded for it because he's picked up a win.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be good so far for Zhym. He's got off to a great start versus SilverName, but there's plenty more games to be played in this series till we decide who is going to be facing Ball Control in the final today. But before we do, we're going to go to a quick break while we set up the next game, so don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back with some more Hearthstone.
De niño solía coleccionar insectos. Pienso que los gatos son mejores que los perros. No sé. Está bueno. Sí.
Empanizado, he looks like a bug collector.
I'm trying to think if I've seen him play, but everyone uses their hand, like their right hand for the mouse, right?
He is left-handed, that's a lie.
I don't know.
I think the one that is a lie is that Empanizado is left-handed.
I don't think Empanizado used left hand.
I don't think he's left-handed.
I'm gonna go with I like cats more than dogs is the lie.
You are correct. That is the lie.
I would say that Empanizado didn't like cats more than dogs.
That is correct.
He likes cats more than dogs, as the lie.
Yep, correct.
I'm gonna say he likes cats more than dogs. That seems like a lie. I think he's a dog person. Wow, I got that right? I don't even know him. That just seems like the one you would lie about. I don't know why. I have no idea why. I was just very pulled to that.
We are back and getting ready to go into Zhym versus, excuse me, SilverName. There we go, as I was not prepared for that. It's going to be into game number 2. Zhym currently leading with a win with that Galakron Warlock. Just, again, just kind of just displaying the overall power, as many games do kind of look like that with the Galakron Warlock, just removing until they can basically secure the board, and then that's going to be it for the opponent. But SilverName also has his Warlock, Druid, and Demon Hunter to go with his Mage, unfortunately banned out. But Zhym, honestly, for me, Subtle, looking pretty good with this Warrior as well. Yep. Yeah, I was even saying, I think I was saying to you yesterday off stream when I was just playing the deck, that a lot of it for me was coming down to like quick pattern recognition of, okay, with Skipper, if I do this, this, and this is the outcome on board. If I do this, this, and that, this is the outcome on board. You know, and being able to just clock that very quickly, I think that's like skill number 1, because the less time you have to sit and really work out the kind of intricacies of, if I do this, then the board changes the outcomes of, say, Blood Boil Brute, then the more time you've got to actually plan your turn and execute it, as opposed to sitting there like I do going, okay, 1 minion deals 1 damage to the board. That does 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. You know, it just takes me way too long right now, which is very frustrating. And I imagine the players are much further ahead than I am on this one.
Yeah, for sure. I think, like you said, doing that kind of stuff quickly is the very important thing, because you need to allocate the rest of the time of your thinking time to strategic planning, right?
Yeah.
To actually working out what you want to do with your turn. So you need to recognize all that mechanical stuff super quickly. It's something that really just takes time and takes reps with the deck.
Yep, it really does, but we'll see what the players are going to be queuing into soon. And just a reminder, if you're tuning in a little bit late, we already had Ball Control take a 3-0 win over Felkane just a little bit earlier, a very quick one, and he is going to be basically sat in the finals now, waiting to play the winner of this match. We've foregone the double elimination now. That's all done and dusted yesterday and the day before. Now, you lose, you're done for the week, but just to make sure you know, all these players have gained a very substantial amount of points over their, other competitors that either did not make it to this weekend or did not get as far as them to make it to Sunday. Let's go into it. Game number 2.
Yeah, apologies. Looks like we missed a couple of turns there in the opening. But we will bring you up to speed here. It is going to be that warrior we were talking about from Zhym going up against the Demon Hunter, and this honestly seems to be a big part of the reason why this warrior has been so favored, at least by the European players, is the matchups that it has against these Demon Hunter decks.
Yeah, and the ability to draw that card on the left, Sottle. Battle Rage is there, which means Zhym has a good chance of winning this game as far as I'm concerned. And actually, the second one is pretty crucial, as it allows Zhym to do this, which would otherwise would have been a slightly worse turn. He can use one to, okay, I'm just going to draw 2 cards, and now his other one can be saved for like the Omega turn, right? Where he can draw maybe 5, 6, 7 plus.
Yes, I will say it quite often works the other way as well. Like the first Battle Rage is so much more important, because if you do have just like the Giga Battle Rage turn off the first one, you're more likely than not going to draw your second one off that Battle Rage anyway, and then you can just have another smaller one later in the game or whatever. So yeah, drawing 1 Battle Rage is massively important, but if you get 2 and you want to use that first one just as a cheap Arcane Intellect, as Zhym did just then fine.
And what do you think, we've talked a lot about this warrior, right? But what do you think Demon Hunter, that has some weaknesses to this warrior, needs to do? Are they doing anything differently to try and counteract what the warrior's going to do? Or are they just saying, I'm just going to play my game and hope it's good enough and fast enough to be able to just kill the warrior before they get off these big burst turns?
I think with this version, the aggro version, I think what SilverName's doing here is smart in that he is paying respect to minions. We saw Kane trade on the previous turn. I think especially because SilverName has this Skull of Gul'dan on the far left, he's comfortable playing quite a long game here against this deck, so he doesn't just need to go face, rushing down. So paying respect to minions and making sure that, the big Rampages, the big Bloodsworn Mercenaries, the big Battle Rages aren't quite as easy for your opponent is smart. Other than that, you've just got to try and, play a fairly straightforward tempo-based game against your opponent and try and out-tempo them and out-dominate the board eventually. I think the OTK deck is the one with significantly more interesting tricks up its sleeve against this deck, which hopefully we will get into at some point.
Yeah, I am looking forward to that. And I have no doubt, if not this week, next week, Sottle, we will get there. But for me as well, one cool card is Zhym is kicking off this turn now and getting it done with just a relatively light, risky skipper, but he does have the second one in hand, of course. But for me, the Metamorphosis that I feel maybe flies under the radar a bit, it doesn't really get talked about that much, maybe because it's a straightforward card, but having just 10 damage burst over 2 turns that cost at least... doing it costs very little mana, apart from the initial 5 mana investment, is pretty good, because the second you activate it, second SilverName activates it, should I say, Zhym will have to think, oh, do I need to do an armor turn? Because maybe I wasn't planning on needing it, and now I definitely do, because there's 10 damage coming, at least, very consecutively.
Zhym does now have Skipper Smith Bloodsworn Mercenary available to him, though, with 6 mana, which is a massive amount of armor gain and clearing potential with this Bomb Wrangler still on board. Oh, looks like we have a little bit of a disconnect issue. Zhym's webcam has frozen there as well, so I hope it's not something too serious from his end.
I thought he was just extremely focused and was just in the ultimate thinking face, just sat staring at the camera like, I will learn this deck at some point. But yeah, interesting point there. It's pretty close. Zhym was on 10 health. We will be fine, by the way. We'll just wait till they reconnect. There's no regame needed, as far as I'm aware, at least. There normally isn't, so we should be safe. But yeah, that was a very close one, and I think even just up to that point, that's often how the matchup looks. The Demon Hunter, says, let's go from turn 1, and the Warrior basically has that pivot point where it either defends and then just sits on X amount of armor and hopefully for the Warriors some cards, and the Demon Hunter kind of runs out of juice, or they can't generate enough armor and something along the lines of Metamorphosis, Warglaves of Azeroth, things like that, to deal just the I will finish you damage kicks in. And I feel like we were right at that point where the decision was going to be made for the game there.
Yeah, we were, but just looking at the state of the board, which I can still see on my own sort of personal spectate here as it's waiting to reconnect, Zhym had a pretty strong turn because SilverName did not have like a full clear on all these minions, which means Zhym had small sources of damage to like go into the 7/3 Adept, for example, and then have a risky skipper clear with double Armor Smith coming back the other way as well. So he was about to have a really, really strong swing turn, it looks like, from his perspective. I can also just confirm that he's gone offline as well, so I'm dreading that there might actually be something serious going on with his internet. The fact that his webcam froze, he's now dropped off the client completely. Fingers crossed he is able to make it back.
Yeah, hopefully it's just one of those pesky internet issues where you just do the old turn it off and on again, and it'll be fine. Just quickly reset the router or whatever, and sort of myself know a lot about tech issues of turning things on and off again the past week or so, setting up these lovely studios from home. I hope you guys are enjoying. We're doing our best. But yeah, I'm sure Zhym will be able to come back. I certainly hope so anyway. But so far, I feel like SilverName was doing a good job, and it's where we see, and maybe the future changes as we get back. I was just going to say, it's where we see some of the higher health minions have such a huge impact. You talk a lot about, the Demon Hunter always has 2 health minions, especially with the Fellwing nerf, but the Adept and maybe some of the chunkier demons come into play soon, just to be able to withstand these warriors.
So you've heard me describe this turn twice, now you actually get to see it happen. You can see, very important, SilverName, I'm not sure if you caught it just as the transition came back into the game. He basically had the decision whether to kill the Boombot or whether to send damage into the Bomb Wrangler. Either way, you can see that Zhym has all these options to be able to leverage 1 point of damage on board to be able to get the full clear, and then with the bombs on top of that as well, it's going to be a huge swing turn for him. And now Zhym finds himself all the way back up to the giddy heights of 26 health.
He really is, but if there's ever a selection of cards that can enact a recovery plan for SilverName, it is an Outlander Skull of Gul'dan, Metamorphosis, and an Altruis. Those are the Triforce team here.
The problem is, okay, I-Beam's a huge pickup. I was going to say, the problem is, he can't do anything with Altruis this turn, which means he's going to end up Skull of Gul'daning, and then Zhym is going to get to keep this board. And if Zhym gets to keep this board, he just battle rages for the rest of his deck next turn. Like, that's terrifying. So the fact that he got an I-Beam there, added SilverName just to take out 1 extra minion, is actually a really, really big deal.
Yeah, I will agree, definitely scary either way for SilverName, but considering half of his deck is still, not drawn, he had 3 very good cards at that point. But let's see what can happen here for Zhym. Does have this second Mercenary. Does have the Vile Fiend as well, which, is going to be delayed as it is a dormant minion. It'll kick out in 2 turns after being played. But a little bit awkward, actually. Like, does he use the Mercenary to get a bigger battle rate, do you think? Or do you think he can save it and be okay with a 4-draw?
Yeah, I think drawing 4 is fine here. I think he can cash out that second Mercenary a little bit harder with some of the options that he still has available. What are you giggling at?
Just SilverName's emote. You possess true power. Yes, drawing 2 battle rages in the game is quite powerful.
I possess true power. It is called battle rage, indeed. You picked up the Sucket Sapper as well. Card that you were talking about the other day to me.
Yeah, it's really impactful because it's cheap enough to still throw down, and worst case, if you throw it down while you're going off with a skipper and it dies, kind of good because it's a sap, so it allows your other minions to attack in. Pretty impactful overall. One of the crazier pirates to be able to get, but still, Altruis is popping off right now. SilverName is managing to clear the board and has Warglaives of Azzinoth along with the Sightless Watcher and a Watermelon active to be able to do something. But is it going to be enough, Sottle? Is he just losing this due to not being able to keep up with card draw?
It's certainly looking that way, yeah. Unless he rips his second Skull of Gul'dan relatively soon, I think he's just going to get supremely outvalued here, because he does have a lot of damage. If you want to count Warglaives as 12 and then 10 from the Metamorphosis, he's only, Zhym is only at functional 10 here, if you want to look at it that way, which is not a huge buffer, considering how much armor he's gained.
The damage hero power every turn as well, because, that is, with no cards in hand, you're using that 1 mana every turn, right? So, if anything, you can add +1 to these Warglaive swings every turn anyway. So, as I said, the Metamorphosis, the Skull, the Warglaives, these are all the cards that can start making up those games. You said earlier, it was the Surrender Rivius game, right? Where you were impressed Surrender even got there or got close to winning the game, and he was so far away in such a big health differential.
Right. Ooh, South Sea Deckhand. Lovely stuff. Love
That's more damage. As always as well, these Livewire Lance can open up some more options with the power of lackeys and... Sweet. There we go.
Oh, and the Alex Straza as well. Very, very nice indeed. Zhym now finding himself with a lot of security from those additional cards. He got the South Sea Deckhand to take extra damage off the board, and now if SilverName has to push all in on damage, he does have that Alex Straza for the final kicker for the heal at the end.
Oh, he's still close. How much damage does SilverName have? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15?
5, 10, 12,
Wait, can
16.
Can he glaive bound as well?
16, 17, 18? No, it's lethal, right? This is still a real twin slice?
Yes, it's twin slice. Yeah, I think that's
exactly
it, right?
18.
Yeah, I was going to say, he has a ton of damage. Wait,
5, 10, 12, 13, 14, 18.
Plus 4. That's lethal.
Yeah.
But does he see it, Sol? I hope so, because it's not the most mind-blowing one, and out of nowhere... Oh.
Wow. Demon Hunter. What a class.
There be some damage, subtle. And oh, wow, again, it does come back a little bit. Easy for me to say now, but Metamorphosis is a lot of damage. Not only because you could also weave in hero powers before and after the fact, but it's just 10 damage. That's a third of someone's regular life total. It's insane. But I do wonder, and honestly, especially with the disconnect and reconnect, I can't really recall specific board states from previous turns, but there was the other Armor Smith in Zhym's hand. Was there ever a consideration to get the Armor Smith down to do something? I can't quite recall card for card, board for board, but he had it. He could have gained a bit more armor, and that was exact lethal. Questions have to be asked.
It was exactly the point I was going to raise. Yeah, he played the Sapper to give himself, I guess, more options for removal on the following turn if other big minions came down. But he could have just more directly tried to gain armor that turn just with hero power and with Armor Smith. But what I will say is that you can't just be entirely defensive in that position. You're sort of looking to safely race your opponent is basically your goal in that position, right? Because you want to get pressure on SilverName as the warrior as well. As the Demon Hunter as well. But yes, you are right. Exact lethal, combinations of cards that could have been played around. Maybe a read could have been developed on what one of those cards was in hand. You knew you were facing down Metamorphosis, which was a ton of damage. Maybe a little bit of an extra armor gain was the ticket there for Zhym.
Yeah, it's one of those tough moments where people are still getting used to the damage and the reach that Demon Hunter can have. And I guess the question for me is, because SilverName had already played Skull, already played Altruis, I think he'd even used 2 Spectral Sights as well. He knew SilverName was on very limited amount of cards. Maybe he could have, in that exact instance, tried to starve SilverName out instead, just in that specific game, because he'd already seen so much card draw and so many big cards get used. But anyway, the past is the past, Subtle. Here we go, going into game number 3. SilverName on the top on his Galakron the Warlock. And Zhym, was that Druid? It's Druid, sorry. I was actually just looking at SilverName whilst I was saying that, so I didn't even see the class. He's going to be against him on this Druid deck.
Nothing doing in the opening here from either player. Rising Wind's going to be used to cycle here from the Druid. Does pick up Fungal Fortune, so at least has some kind of game plan moving forward now.
Yeah, I love that card as well. I think Rising Wind is so insane. The draw, minion, oh wait, you can do it all over again if you want. Keeps the hand size big. It's just such a good filler card for Druid. But already, without I mentioned earlier, with Druids not running swipe in these crazy times, Zhym does have to be aware of these minions, because the more tokens he leaves on SilverName's side of the board, the more that there are to trade into his tokens, right? And you definitely don't want Warlock to just have free trades into your board. You want them to have to use the big removal tools, the Dark Skies and the Plague of Flames.
Yeah. Not having the Fungal Fortunes on 2 there did make things a little bit awkward for Zhym. He had to throw away the coin, essentially, just to be able to make room in his hand for the 3 card draws, and then just, you know, using a Moonfire as well to get a card out of his hand at the end of the turn, so he remains on 9. Not exactly the most efficient use of either of those 2 cards.
No, and just a reminder to pull myself out of the SilverName Druid headspace I was in, but Zhym is running a Wild Growth, obviously the 2 overgrowths that he's not drawn yet, which must feel pretty bad for him that he's not hit any of those ramps. He's running the 1 Mount Cellar, the 1 Soul of the Forest, and then the single Wrath, and as we saw earlier, he is running the Moonfires that are fairly standard, I would say, in the list.
Sure. It's looking dangerously like Zhym was going to spend some mana on some of his cards then, which is forbidden in Druid.
Yeah, if there's a number on the mana count, it means you actually just can't play it. Is the way it works. Only things with 0 on are the ones you're allowed to touch. Does now have the overgrowth though, so although a little bit late to the party, is still going to have an impact.
Oh yeah, for sure. Overgrowth is such a powerful effect that, you know, even in the mid game like this, it is still very relevant.
Yeah, 2 is a big number when we're talking how many mana crystals you have access to.
It's twice as 1. Like, the Wild Growth gave you 1. Overgrowth gives you twice as many as that, Raven. Can you believe it?
Still no, if I'm honest. but it's there. I do believe often what my eyes tell me, so I can see the overgrowth. And the good thing here for Zhym is, although he's not got access to KT, he has all the threat cards right outside of maybe the Soul of the Forest already in his hand, so he can form some kind of plan. His plan doesn't fully rely on, well, I'm going to overflow and hope I get them. You know, like he does have something to be able to work with for in the short term at least.
Yeah, actually now finally draws like his first payoff card, the exotic Mount Cellar. Pretty controversial card in the deck, I would say. Not everyone is convinced that you're supposed to run this card because various reasons. It's sort of slightly inconsistent in what it produces, yes, and it also competes for cards, I guess, with Kael'thas, the other sort of power play in the deck. So
but now, you know, you've got to question where you're at when the Warlock is beating you down with tokens and you're the Druid. Zhym has not really put any of these questions forward to SilverName yet. No. And we're getting late in the game, and Warlock only really gets better when it draws more of its deck. Just a small note as well that is quite impactful. SilverName is running 2 of the Rain of Fires in this list, so he has access to even more AoE than regular, as 2 is, you know, 1 you could argue is that class to standard or not at the moment, maybe. 2 definitely not, and with the 2 Moargs, those are some big AoE extras for just 1 man.
Instant Zigzaw, first card. Beautiful stuff. Love to see.
I can't wait for Hunter to get good soul, honestly.
Wait, how long have you been waiting? Like 3 years or something?
Oh yeah, tell that to Death Rattle Hunter soul with cubes. Tell that to Beast Hunter.
You didn't play that deck, did you?
I played Cube, yeah, I loved it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Cube's one of my favorite cards that's ever been released in Hearthstone, honestly.
Okay.
It's a very filthy card, but I just loved it was so fun to play.
Zigzaw doesn't actually end up being as relevant as you might think in Druid a lot of the time. Like, by that I mean the prime shuffling effect, because a lot of the time, like, once you get to this period of the game where Mount Cellar is summoning things, the game ends quite quickly one way or the other, right? Like, either the Druid just keeps up pounding resources and pushes a bunch of damage, or they gas out and then they lose. Also, secondly, it's just another card that, like, you know, you draw your Fungal Fortunes and then you cast it and there's a minion in your deck that's the Zigzaw Prime, so it just ends up getting discarded anyway, right? So it actually doesn't come up as often as you might think on the surface. No,
definitely the odd times it would become playable. It's probably quite impactful because it is another, you know, army in a box basically. So it is. I mean, the fact it has rush means you can actually do a stronger turn setup. But you're quite right. I don't even think I've seen it happen in Druid yet, and I've watched a lot of Druid. And I've seen them summon a lot of Zigzaws as well, and I've still not seen the Prime get played. So yeah, definitely not a common occurrence, even with the summon, and that we'll call that one a whiff, Sol.
think we describe that as hyper garbage. Yikes.
Yeah, and facing down a lot of damage as well. Overflow can be cast just to help out in terms of health if he's that worried about it. But with this board, I think Zhym's more concerned with just securing this, because this looks pretty miserable from SilverName's side.
What to do?
It's still a really tough turn from Zhym's perspective, though.
Needs Solar Forest.
Still be an overflow turn.
Yeah, just to set him up.
You could take the trades, or take at least one big trade with the Mukla, and then take the overflow. He's just going to push, though. Interesting.
It's a tough call. Because again, the longer you wait, the easier it is for SilverName to set up Plague of Flames, set up any removal, to just replay threats, especially going to turn 9. If he did nothing there, does he get ruined by an... however unlikely it may be, but, you know, if the Dragon Queen was active then, like, does he just lose? And maybe that just has to be a risk you take. I don't mind this. I think this is fine.
I'm definitely willing to chance my opponent having Dragon Queen Alexstrasza active with 13 cards left in the deck. Like,
right, yeah.
Sure, run that risk.
Yeah, I'm not saying it was a major consideration, but it's just that thing of, if you don't play anything, are you susceptible to a board that's created from SilverName?
Right. As it happens, I mean, there's no Netherwing in SilverName's hand. So this play is looking pretty promising from Zhym's perspective.
He can get some work done. He has Moag, he has the Mortal Coil, has double Nether Breath. Like, he can deal with enough of this to be okay. And he can draw a card, and you never know, he might draw Netherwing now if he starts with
He just
Coil.
has Rain of Fire alongside this, right? If he wants to completely
okay,
neutral
okay.
the 2/2s.
Yeah, and can he coil afterwards? No, he can't. I wonder whether he should have coiled anyway. Do you think he should have coiled one?
Just to cycle it?
While the Moag's down?
Oh, interesting. I was surprised not to see the Nether Breath get used on the 7/3 then. Especially when you know that Overflow is a possibility. Yeah, I think SilverName's reaction to that Overflow is not what he wanted to see. Maybe he ruled that card out because it wasn't played on the previous turn.
Yeah.
Like, maybe he was
true.
in line with my thinking on that, because he saw him react to the top-decked one, right, that Zhym played.
That is true. KT drawn as well from Zhym, which means, especially using this wild growth, not to gain mana, but to get that excess mana, which means it's just a fantastic activator for KT.
Still works out, though, because the Artificial wasn't taken down. SilverName still gets to push through and go very, very much on the offensive here.
But there is an Ironbark still in the hand, so there is taunt capabilities, as well as the Gift of the Wild, of course.
Yeah.
So it means Zhym does have ways to stall this, but the problem is, and this is where the difficulty occurs, I guess, is how far does Zhym have to go to make SilverName Plague if he has it? Because that's what he has to do, right? So if he goes too weak, the Alexstrasza just beats him up.
Yes.
But if he goes too strong, he overcommits into what is quite likely going to be a Plague from SilverName, because SilverName's not played one yet, and I think with 11 cards left, you put the Warlock on having a Plague.
Well, it's also just a really horrible turn to pop off on, because your opponent just has a Moag Artificer just sat on the board staring at you. Like, it's miserable.
At least the Alexstrasza negates a chunk of that, because Dark Skies is not good for SilverName right now. And he's seen
Well, if he was going to do anything, he had to do it at least 30 seconds ago, so it looks like he's just kind of out of this game. Alright, good. Yeah, I really don't know about that delay from SilverName, because he gave Zhym so much time to, like, plan his turn out.
Yeah, that's a good point. And what was he considering? Just sack pack or not sack pack?
For the health?
You know,
yeah,
like...
I imagine so. It just seems really bizarre, because you know these turns get very, very complicated. We've seen multiple players in GM, like, rope these turns already, just over these last few days, so I really just think SilverName should have ended his turn like 30 seconds before he did. It's very, very curious to me.
Looks like he's going to get rid of this Moag. And again, the Moag, as you saw then, if you're wondering, wait, what dealt 4? What's the Crystal Power? Because the Moag Artificer is an effect that works both ways. The ultimate double-edged sword, as your opponent also gains double spell damage to minions.
So there goes Zhym, plays his whole hand, leans back. Okay, your turn, buddy. Off you go.
Ah, but now it's just cleared, isn't it?
Pretty much.
The Galakron Hero Power, just the interaction between the Galakron Invoke / Hero Power and Plague of Flames is just insane. So, do you want 3 minions to just field this fuel this insane removal all the time?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do actually. And even losing the Alexstrasza feels bad, but wiping this board feels good. So who cares?
What about?
No, you don't have Kane SilverName. You do have to hit a taunt.
Just gonna wave my Alexstrasza at your face briefly, just to see if that happens. No, okay, that didn't work. Fine, we'll move on.
And all that push from Zhym, gone. And now, still 2 Nether Breaths left. I mean, it's getting close. It's a tough call here. I did wonder whether he should just play Zephyrus.
Or just as a Bloodfen Raptor?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You're close. Oh.
It happened.
Yes.
It happened,
I
Raven.
love this card. That is probably the best draw, right?
Yeah.
Because Soul of the Forest, he couldn't cast it with anything anyway this turn. And these have more health than Forest Aid tokens. And he just saw a Plague. Easy clear though if he wants. There is Zephyrus. There's also Netherwing Zephyrus now for a clear. And you present minions on the board for lethal with the double Nether Breath next turn.
Yeah. And interestingly, like, this Netherwing was the card that activated his Highlander card. So he's had both Netherwings in his deck this entire time. Even without Netherwings, he has done absolutely fine this game.
Yeah.
Oh, he wanted at least 1 damage on everything there. I think that was the goal. So he could just use the Netherwing to nuke. The guy on the left completely dodged.
Was it not just better to just bite the bullet and end the turn with a 5/5 and a 3/2?
I think he's like, I think he wants to just Nether Breath, Zephyrus, like lethal, you know?
I guess. I just, at this point, you've seen pretty much Zhym's whole deck. Is there that many things that can kill a 5/5 and a 3/2?
Wait, actually, wasn't that just lethal that turn? If he just went Nether Breath, Zephyrus?
Oh wait, Zephyrus was active, wasn't it?
Yeah, he spends 6 mana and then he gets given a fireball.
And he's seeing it. He's seeing it at the same time as we have, so we can't say anything. But still,
Wait, what's this Wii business? You didn't see anything. Come on.
We're a team, Song.
Oh,
That's
okay,
how it works,
yeah,
mate.
You're right.
We're a team.
You're right.
We share each other's victories and defeats.
Yeah.
But he did get there anyway. So luckily for SilverName, never punished. But still, yeah, maybe we all went a bit deep in the tank overthinking this. The thing Zixor does to your mind.
It's just as soon as I said it, it's like, I'm pretty sure he just wants to Nether Breath Zephyrus.
You're like,
hang on.
Wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
There was literally nothing stopping him doing it. Yeah. Absolutely crazy there. Pretty embarrassing on all ends of the screen here. On our end and SilverName's, no doubt. But sometimes, we've all had it where we get sucked into a certain playstyle, right? Versus tokens. Remove the tokens, remove the tokens, remove the tokens. And then you go, oh wait, I could have killed him 3 turns ago. Oops. And I think we've all done it at one time or another. But SilverName is going to get a win there and now go up to a 2-1 lead over Zhym with only 1 more win required with his own version of Token Druid to be able to take it. And these games are insane. But once again, I'll just highlight Warlock. Everyone's focused on Demon Hunter. But like you said, he didn't even struggle to clear everything. He cleared things when he didn't need to. He had lethal and still cleared the board. And it's like a never-ending wave with the double Netherwings available. Like, it seems insane that Warlock is being let through, and I'm wondering whether it's even worth bans at this point. I see a lot of bans going round, and Warlock is consistently winning matches in Grandmasters so far.
I think Warlock has been the most popular ban. It's just some series we are seeing it get left up, and clearly, Zhym has a different idea on what his ban strategy is, because he's been very uniquely banning Druid throughout the tournament.
Right.
But I think one thing I will say is that watching these Grandmasters games has really changed my perspective on that matchup a little bit, because I played it a lot from the Druid side and felt fine, felt pretty comfortable in the matchup, felt like it was decent. Looked at the stats that we have on stat aggregating websites, and it seems to support that. If you go to high legend ranks, that it seems to be decent for Druid. But then when we see it at this level, it does seem like the Warlock just has game to spare in this matchup.
Honestly, because we talked about this a few days ago before we even started casting, and I honestly said after playing Druid, I said that how do you win versus Warlock without double soul? So the first thing I jumped to straight away, and you said, well, I've looked at the stats, I've played it, it seems fine. I was like, I must just suck then, because to me it feels as hopeless as at least that last game looked. I'm not saying it is every time, but that last game was kind of representing my experience with that matchup.
Maybe you are just playing against GM level Warlocks every single time.
At my MMR, it's likely. But anyway, moving on here into the Druid mirror. Not a mirror match in terms of exact card count, as SilverName is playing quite a different version, but still in overall archetype. They're both going to be ramping, they're both going to be drawing cards, and they're both going to be making some tokens.
Also, someone tweeted me to defend your honor, Raven. Someone asked me, how is saying tad bit any different from other people saying little bit? Which I think is a great point. And I'm just going to bring that up because I like great points, and I think that is one. So consider your honor defended, Raven.
I'll consider it. Okay. But yes, but thank you, Twitter person who I'm not going to look up the name of yet because I'm busy working. I don't just chill and read Twitter while I cast, like some people do. But
wow. Dude, just because I have more monitors than you, that's what you're really saying.
Yeah. Or I just do other things while I cast that isn't read Twitter. Yeah, you never know. But while this game has been accelerating at quite the pace, SilverName again using one of those cards that is not standard, the Anubisath Defender, which honestly, Sottle, is one of the cards I like the most that SilverName's included, because a lot of decks aren't coping with the health that well, are they? Versus, I can deal 2 to everything because that's what Druid does in terms of generating those level minions. But the 3/5 is kind of pesky.
I completely agree. Yeah, I think of all the weird cards that are in this deck, this is the one that makes the most sense to me. I've talked a lot about how Frenzied Fellwing in Demon Hunter, for example, just having the 1 extra health can really be a nightmare for a lot of decks. I think this 3/5, 0 mana 3/5 at that is having a very, very similar effect.
It's like it's already been ironbarked.
And welcome to Druid Mirrors, by the way. By the time we've finished talking about all the setup, the game is pretty much over.
Yeah, there's almost no comeback, is there? And I don't like to just, end games on a dull note, but what are you going to do? There's no answer. And the shrug of the shoulders from SilverName, he knows, Zhym knows, and that is going to be over. And SilverName, with maybe a couple of his mind wandering a little bit in the last game and missing the initial lethal, but still brought it back with that mirror. And honestly, as you quite rightly said, Sottle, that's just what the mirror is. The first person to land the tokens. We saw it in Rivius versus Surrender, I think, in Asia Pacific. If you were watching then, it was the same. I think Rivius just played his tokens first, and there aren't cards really available outside for the odd Starfall that can deal with that. And yeah, shrug. I'm going to join SilverName and just shrug, because that's literally it. There's no deep analysis. You play tokens, they don't die, you win. That's it.
If you watch the tape really carefully, you can pinpoint the exact moment his brain ran out of words to say.
Pretty often per broadcast, if I'm honest. So.
Yeah, that was beautiful. I enjoyed it. But what is also beautiful is this final we're going to have coming up for you between Ball Control and SilverName. They are going to be scrapping it out for the big 6 points in our week 1 of qualifying rounds, essentially. Winner will get 6, loser will get 5. Both of the eliminated players that you've seen today, Falcane and Zhym, are going to receive 4. And instead of the big French dominance storyline that we spent the last couple of days hyping up, it's quite the reverse of that. And actually neither of our French players were able to progress through to the finals. But I think you can still probably chalk this up as a successful week for French Hearthstone.
Yeah, that's the one thing to remember. However much we're focused on, the finals, who's going to finish first and get the most points, all of the players you've seen this weekend have got a good amount of points, and especially, Falcane and Zhym have got another solid amount of points. There is only, might sound very silly to explain, there is only Ball Control and SilverName that will have more points than them out of all of the 16 Grandmasters players. So it sounds stupid, but I think it's important to point out stupid things now and again. It's why I've got a job, which is just saying they are doing significantly better than most of the field they're up against right now. And if they can keep up even just a decent performance in the next couple of weeks, they're looking like a pretty solid, people to get into that Division A.
I was going to say, I'm glad your brain started functioning again, so you could come out with more nuggets of genius like that one, Raven. But, 6 and 5, more than 4. That's what I'm talking about.
Sometimes it does need explaining, Sol. I'm sorry, but that is completely true.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do have
I think...
Oh, go on.
I was just going to say, while we're sort of doing surface level stuff on the point standings, I want to reiterate the point of just like 6 points, the 1 win for this final that we have coming up. It really very closely locks you into being in Division A if you're able to win 1 single week, because the likelihood of enough players, of over half the players in the division, jumping past you to be then in that top division when we get into main round robin play, it's very unlikely that happens. Like, you would have to have some absolute dumpster performances for the other 2 weeks, and the ratio of other players that were picking up points around you would have to happen in a certain way.
Yeah, in a very specific way, because it's like everyone would have to do kind of just as good as each other, right, to boost enough people up through the points. There's the points breakdown there if you want a quick reminder. But as we said, that there is a good chunk of people in the bottom half, which are 3 points and below. And as you can see, first place, double the points in 1 week. There are only 3 weeks of this format of these Swiss tournaments, which means already a third of it has gone by, and the other players are running out of time. Anyone who finished in the bottom half of the bracket for Swiss needs to pull their socks up next week, because if they have a rough week again, just as much as the players who finish first are likely to Group A, if you have 2 bad weeks in a row, you are very likely to Division B as well, which puts you in a very dicey spot for a further 4 weeks, and it's going to put a lot of pressure on these players every single game of Hearthstone they play.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think if we have to hang around too much longer without, seeing, if we don't see RDU next week or Corento next week or some of these players that we don't see, there's going to be people in chat like, wait, I'm sure these people were GMs. Like, where are they? Like, why aren't they showing up on broadcast? So,
we did see Corento this week, but I don't know what you're talking about.
Sure. All right. Bad example. I'll stick to throwing shade at RDU then. RDU Perfect. Specifically. Step your game up. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we are going to go to a quick break while we set up the finals of the European Grandmasters Week 1. We'll get to it very, very quickly. But I'm just going to give the players just a minute to get ready. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with some more Hearthstone.